Okay, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, and thank you for finding time to join us on this webinar today. My name is Martin, and I work as Education Support Manager here at ACCA. And this session today is meant to provide you with detailed information regarding the changes that are being introduced to the SBL exam from September 2023. And to take us through the session today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Joanne, Jesse, and Michelle, who are part of the SBL examining team. Before I hand over to Joanne, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. Now you'll find a couple of buttons at the bottom of your screen, which will be useful to you in the course of this webinar. There's a help icon on the left, which provides resources and information to help you resolve any technical issues that you might experience. You'll also see some icons for the slides and the media player, so ensure that you've selected both of these. There is an attendee chat function that will enable you to engage with fellow webinar attendees, and that icon is on the right-hand side. We also have a list of available resources, the icon that looks like a file symbol. So if you click on that, you'll be able to access the resources relevant to today's webinar, including the direct links. Please feel free to rearrange your screen to suit you and resize the windows if you need to. And in case you can't hear or see the visuals at any point, please do refresh your browser. If you've registered for this webinar, it means you'll be sent an email tomorrow with details of how you can listen to it again. So don't worry if you miss anything or if you have any technical issues, as you'll be able to access the recording. I'm going to hand over to Joanne in a moment. And if you'd like to ask a question, then please click on the Q&A button. We're going to highlight that on your screen shortly and submit your questions, and we'll have this responded to. And at the end of the session, towards the end, we'll have a Q&A session where we respond to some of the questions live. And please note that we may not guarantee responding to all the questions due to the volumes involved, but we hope that the questions we share will be helpful to everyone. So welcome once again. And now, Joanne, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martin, and welcome everybody. Jesse, Michelle and I work in the SBL examining team, and we're going to be talking you through some of the changes that are coming in September 2023. So we've got a few slides, not a huge number, but we've got the slides that pick up on the major changes. We're going to go through those, and then, as Martin said, we'll have a Q&A session. Please put in your questions and we'll get to as many as we can after we've been through the slides. So starting off, and in September, we're going to be introducing 3 key changes to SBL, and this will start from September and continue. So it's from the September 2023 session onwards. The first change we're making is we are introducing pre-seen information, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. The second change we're making is that we are shortening the length of the exam. So previously, SBL was a 4-hour exam. We're reducing it down to 3 hours and 15 minutes, and we'll talk about that. And then the third change that we're making is to do with the format of the exam. Not all of it is changing, but there are some aspects of the format that are changing, and we'll explain those to you. So those are the 3 key changes that we're going to go through over in these slides. And if anything is unclear, please pop a question in the Q&A chat, and we'll get to it at the end of the slides. So if we start with that first big change, which is the pre-seen. So 2 weeks before your September exam, so on the 22nd of August, we will be releasing pre-seen information to you. Now, the pre-seen information is going to be information about the industry and the fictitious organization that your September exam is going to be based on. So it's going to give you a bit of background and a bit of context. Now, this information used to be given in exhibits in the old sort of format, but we're giving you a bit more detail and releasing it 2 weeks now before the September exam. So that'll be on the 22nd of August. It will be released through Exam Planner, and you'll be sent an email explaining how to access it. Now, the pre-seen information, that the reason why we're releasing it is to give you time to analyze, well, and understand the information, become totally familiar with the information before you go into the exam. So to reduce that exam pressure that exists at the moment, where there's a lot of new information to work through. There will still be new information in the exam, but you'll be walking into that exam in September with an idea, an understanding of the organization that the questions are going to be based on, and you'll be able to put the new information that will be released in the exam into context straight away. And it helps all students. So it helps students who've got English as a second language, because we know in the current format there are sometimes terms and words that aren't easily understood. But it also helps anybody who isn't very familiar with the industry in which the fictitious organization is based. So that's the aim of the pre-seen information, released 2 weeks beforehand. We will be giving you guidance on what to do with the pre-seen. We'll be talking through do's and don'ts as part of this session, but it is important that you do access it as soon as it's released. So give yourself the 2 weeks, work through it really carefully, and become really familiar with it. So that's the pre-seen information. The next change is the reduction in time. So at the moment it's a 4-hour exam. It will change from September to be 3 hours 15 minutes, which is in line with the other strategic professional exams. The reason why we're reducing the time is because you'll have a lot of pre-seen information. So the amount of new information in the exam will be reduced. So it'll be shorter than it is at the moment, so fewer exhibits. And because you'll be walking into the exam already being comfortable and understand the industry and the organization. So a lot of that time that's currently spent in that 4-hour exam, sort of reflecting and trying to assimilate all the different information, we're now taking out of the exam session. You'll do that beforehand, and you'll be walking into the exam, shorter exam, so less stress. I think the 4-hour exam, a lot of students find very long, very stressful, very tiring. Shorter exam, and you'll be going in with an idea, just like you do in the real world when you're going to give advice and recommendations. You've already got an idea of the industry and the fictitious organization, and then you've got time to understand in the exam the actual issues that are included in exhibits. So 3 hours 15 minutes, and it's up to you how you manage that 3 hours 15 minutes. So obviously in the 3 hours and 15 minutes you've got to read the information that's provided to you. There will be new information in exam exhibits. You've then got to plan your answers and write them. So you will have to work efficiently and effectively during those 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we would recommend that you make sure you've gone into the practice platform, looked at the specimens and practiced to exam time, because now you've not got 4 hours, you've got 3 hours and 15 minutes, but you do have less new information, and you come in with an understanding of the organization and the industry. The third change is the exam format. Now, a lot of the exam will look the same. So you'll have a background page, which gives you information about your role and the lists, the exhibits. And there will be new exhibits, and they'll look the same as they currently do, or they did in the previous format. And those exhibits can be minutes, or they can be an article or a memo or an email. They'll look the same. What you'll also have in the exam is access to the pre-seen. So SBL is remaining a closed book exam. So even though we're releasing the pre-seen 2 weeks early, you cannot take an annotated copy of that pre-seen with you into the exam. So there's no notes taken into the exam. It's a closed book exam, but you will be able to access the pre-seen, a clean copy of it, in the CBE environment. So that's the different change. So you will have the pre-seen available to you in the exam. There will still be tasks, but we are limiting to 3 tasks. So previously there could have been 4 or 5 tasks. Now we're limiting every exam to 3 tasks, but they can be for a varying number of marks, and they can be split into parts. So you could have a part A, B, and C potentially, but 3 tasks in total. And each professional skill is only going to be tested once. So the professional skills, there are 5 of them. We'll continue to examine all 5, just like we do at the moment. But instead of having professional skills marks being 2, 3, or 4, each professional skill now will only be examined once, and it will be examined out of 4 marks. Right, so that will be clear in the exam. Just like we have at the moment, below the tasks, it tells you which professional skill to cover in answering that task, and there'll be the 4-mark allocation. But what we are changing is that each of the tasks will now be answered in a separate response area. So previously, SBL was answered all in one go. So yes, you could see everything on screen at the same time, and you answered all your tasks together. And most of them, apart from the slides and the spreadsheets, were all in that word processor response area. What we're changing now is that you will answer each of the tasks separately. So in the CBE environment and on the practice platform, if you're having a look at that, you will see all the exhibits and you will see the pre-seen, but you only will see one task at a time, and each of the tasks is answered in a separate response area. You can still move backwards and forwards. So if you start answering task 1, you move on to task 2, and then you realize you forgot something and you want to go back to task 1, you can. So you can still go backwards and forwards. The tasks only become complete when you submit your final exam, but they will be answered in separate response areas, and it is important that you answer in the correct response area. So don't answer task 2 in the task 1 response area. You need to make sure that you're using the correct response area to answer each task. So that's the exam format change, but it is reflected in the practice platform on those specimens. So those are the 3 big changes. Now what I'm going to do is hand over to Jessie, and she's going to talk to you about things that aren't changing.
Thank you, John, and hello. It's not everything is changing. There are some things that are still remaining, and I'm going to go through those elements that are unchanged. So the changes that John has discussed only affect the structure and the format of the SBL exam. But the exam will continue to be an integrated case study in which all the requirements relate to a single case study scenario. So despite the questions or the tasks to be independently answered in a separate response options, but it is still one exam based on the one case study based on the pre-seen and the exhibits that will be provided in that exam. It will continue to be closed book exam. As John has stated, you will not be allowed to take any scratch pad, any paper with you, not even the pre-seen itself. You cannot take it in the exam. A copy will be provided in your exam. You will continue to be given the role or roles that you should assume as you carry out the various tasks in the case study. And this role will be provided in the introductory page of the live exam. And this is important to read that page before you start writing the exam. Not only to know your role, but also to have an idea of the further information provided in the exhibits and any other important information that the examining team feel you need to bear in mind as you do your exam. The quality, the integrity, and the rigor of the exam remains the same. ACCA will continue to offer an exam that focuses on application and includes strategic thinking, business direction, problem solving, evaluation, advice to prepare you for workplace. And this has always been the spirit behind the SBL exam. The content of the syllabus remains the same. There are no changes to the study guide for exams from September 2023. The exam will continue to test across all syllabus areas. This is very important because in SBL, we don't have core syllabus areas. We have not identified that these are core areas. Every area of the syllabus is equally important and so is examinable. The SBL exam will continue to have 80% technical marks and 20% professional skills marks. This has not changed, except, as Joe already mentioned, each of the 5 professional skills will only be tested once in each exam. That's the only change. Otherwise, nothing has changed the way professional skills are tested. But remember, there's also general professionalism that you must continue to demonstrate in all your answers. Let's move on to the resources that we have prepared, we have created, or plan to create to help you through the changes and prepare you to sit your SBL exam with confidence. Those of which are available now, you can view them on the resource tab in your screen, as Martin mentioned earlier on. But more will be provided as and when they are available. There are new examining team articles providing essential information to guide you through these changes, and there are 5 of them which are listed on the left side of the slide. The first one is announcing the SBL changes. This is an article that explains the details of the changes, much of what we have touched on in this webinar. The second one is changes to SBL exam structure of tasks. The purpose of this article is to illustrate how tasks will be answered in the new format. Joanne has explained, how the tasks will be seen in the CBE format. That is, you have to answer one question and then move on to the next task, and then move on to another or the next task. So this document explains how that is done, but you can read this document. Most important, you must experience the actual CBE functionality in the practice platform itself. The next is the examining team guidance, which explains the expectation of the examining team from an SBL candidate who is ready to sit and pass the exam. It is in 2 parts. The first part provides the overall aim of the SBL assessment and the main skills and capabilities expected from candidates taking this exam. Part 2 provides general advice and recommendations on exam techniques and approaches to help you maximize your chances of passing the exam. Note that there are not rules, but best practices that you need to consider as you learn the syllabus and practice questions in order to develop your own technique and approach that will work best for you in the exam. And the last one is how to use the SBL pre-scene, which helps to guide you in how best to use the pre-scene within the 2 weeks before the live exam. Now, there are 2 specimen exams available in the practice platform, Specimen 1 and Specimen 2. And each has the pre-scene element in it, the exam, the answers, and the marking guide. These give you a flavor of the style and the format of the new SBL exam. Since there are no changes to the content of the SBL syllabus, existing resources, including all technical articles, past exams, and examiner reports, which are still available on the website, continue to be useful resources to equip you with appropriate knowledge and skill to pass the exam. However, to practice timings and CPE functionality, you need to do the specimen exams in practice platform in an exam environment. We also provide additional support to ensure you have maximum chance of passing your exam. And these include explainer videos, podcasts, and webinars. Please do spare time to join or listen to these. We are in the process of creating a mock exam to add to the specimen exams for more practice, and this will be available around 14th August. Okay. That's all we had, and thank you all for listening. It's now your time for questions, and I hand over to Michelle, who will be leading the Q&A sessions. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Oh, slight echo there. Just to reiterate, I've got a couple of questions here. They may be things we've mentioned, but people may have come in late. So my first question that has been asked is, how will students access the pre-scene information? How will they get hold of it?
I can take that one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you go, Jessie. Jessie, you go.
Okay. The pre-scene will be accessed through my exam planner, your exam planner.
Okay.
I hope you, yeah.
Yeah. Through exam planner, yeah.
What date is it coming out on then? Just if we can reiterate that as well.
Yeah, the 22nd of August. So it'll be exactly 2 weeks before an exam, and that's how it's going to work in each session. It'll be 2 weeks before the SBL exam. So this time it's the 22nd of August. You access the pre-scene through exam planner. There's also another document that you can access as well on exam planner, which is the guidance on how to use the pre-scene. And you will get an email telling you how to access, and we are tracking to see when students are downloading it, and so we will be sending reminder emails to students who haven't downloaded it. But we strongly recommend, can't say it strongly enough, that you do download it as soon as you can, to give yourself time to become really familiar with it. So don't leave it until the night before the exam. Take the full advantage of the 2 weeks that you've got that pre-scene available to you.
Okie dokie. And those 2 weeks, what do you advise students to do within the 2 weeks?
It's important that students spend those 2 weeks really familiarizing themselves with the pre-scene information. So reading it, but reading it carefully, and probably reading it through a couple of times, a number of times, just making sure they understand it. The pre-scene is just background and context, so it doesn't have the exam tasks in it. It's not going to give you big clues as to what's coming up in your exam. It is just background and context. If there is anything in the pre-scene that you don't understand, so there might be a term or terms that are used in this industry or a process that we mention, and you don't quite understand it in the pre-scene, you've now got time before the exam to research that a little bit, but the emphasis is a little bit. So don't spend 2 weeks researching all aspects of this industry and gaining loads of knowledge, because that knowledge is not going to get you marks in the exam. Remember, the exam questions will be focused on the fictitious organization, and the tasks will be very specific about that fictitious organization. So there are not marks available in the exam for just general knowledge and know-how about the industry. So that's quite different from some other pre-scenes that other institutes issue. So be aware of that. We are not expecting you to do lots of research. Just understand what's in the pre-scene. That everything that you need is there for you. You don't need to do anything extra, but you can absolutely talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, talk to your tutors, so that you're absolutely free to do that, but in the 2 weeks beforehand. And probably read it through a number of times. Think of it in terms of the SBL syllabus a bit. Don't use it for question spotting, and talk to colleagues and tutors. I think that's my advice. Jessie, have you got anything else?
That's very clear, Jo. But just to add, don't have so much information when you're getting the exam. Don't memorize it. Others would ask, should I actually memorize? Because we're saying you don't have a copy in the exam. Should I memorize it? No, don't memorize. You will be given further information to help you with your tasks. The pre-scene is just to have some background information so that you are able to follow the new information that you'll be given in the exam. So don't memorize, just understand, familiarize with it. When you get in the exam, focus on the new information that you are given. And if you want to refer to the pre-scene, it's just for context only. That is just the background. And then go on and answer the questions.
Also, it is important that in the 2 weeks that between the pre-scene release and the exam, you don't neglect the normal revision things, so that look at the whole syllabus, do practice questions. So don't let the 2 weeks before the exam just be about the pre-scene and you've neglected everything else, because what is going to help you pass is question practice, understanding all the elements of the syllabus, and the pre-scene. It's the three all together. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And a question that's come up a few times as well: are the past exams on the practice platform and in revision kits and the like still going to be useful?
They are going to be very, very useful, because as we said, the changes are just, the format and the structure of the exam. Everything else remains the same. The syllabus remains the same. So the content of the knowledge in the SBL is the same, because the syllabus has remained the same. Also, the style of SBL exams still remains the same. Currently we have exhibits, and then followed by tasks. And the tasks, when you're answering, you're looking at all the exhibits, because it's integrated, exam. That continues, and therefore the past exams, even the revision kits or questions, have that. So the style is the same. The way the tasks are structured, you have the STEM or the introduction, you have the audience, you are asked the professional skills, you are asked the format, you are given the roles. All that remains, and therefore all the past questions are useful. The only thing is to learn the CBE functionality, to know how the new format is actually going to be. And you can do that using the specimen exams and the mock exams that will be available. Otherwise, the rest is the same. Jo, you have anything to add on that?
No, just to reiterate that they absolutely are still relevant and are really an important source of practice, because a lot of the September exam will look the same, tasks in the same style, professional skills will be the same, a lot of the exhibit styles will be the same. The examining team hasn't changed, their approach really hasn't changed, so those are still a very, very useful resource. Yeah.
And also, just to add, not just the past exams, but including articles as well, all the articles that are still there, that are all useful because it's the syllabus and the knowledge that you need to have in order to pass the exam. So they're all relevant. Thank you.
Okay, and I think there's something we need to reiterate is a couple of people are asking if the pre-scene will be available in the exam. And yes, it will be available, folks, via a button on the left-hand side of your screen. So that's another reason why, as Jessie and Joe were suggesting earlier, you don't need to remember it. You don't need to memorize it. It will be there for you to look at as required. So with the pre-scene, we've talked about it a bit. And I know people have maybe not seen a pre-scene before and not used one. So could you give us some advice on do's and don'ts when the pre-scene becomes available, please?
Yeah, as I said, the pre-scene isn't a very, very long document, and it does contain everything that you need. So it's they're normally in two parts. There's an industry part and then moves on to the organization, and it'll give you information about what's going on in the industry, and it's usually in a fictitious country, and it'll give you some information about that, the customers, suppliers, the risks. So it is important that you access it as soon as it's released, so you've given yourself time to work through it. Read it, understand it, talk to people about it. Don't do extra research, like we've just said, unless there are things that you don't understand. And just make sure that, think of it in terms of things like the SBL syllabus. Don't question spot with it, because you'll get new information in the exam, and that'll be the focus of the tasks. So don't waste time and energy thinking about what's coming up in the exams, because you will get new information. So probably we'd say don't leave it too late to read it. Don't think that one quick read of it is enough. It's probably going to take you a few reads through, take time, potentially read it, have a think, come back to it, read it again. You might want to do some kind of spider diagrams or mind maps with it. You can't take those into the exams with you, but it might help you become more familiar and understand the information a bit more. Don't neglect question practice. So don't just make this your focus. You need to be practicing questions, and you need to be looking at all the syllabus. Those are my do's and don'ts. Jessie, have you got anything else?
Actually, you have covered, all the important ones. Probably, if I may add just one, is remember that the industry and the organization is fictitious. So it doesn't represent any real company. It's not the real industry, and that's why we are saying you shouldn't do too much research, other than just, if you don't understand some terminologies given in the pre-scene, then you can further check, because the examining team will simplify things. You cannot learn everything about that industry, so we'll simplify things, and therefore you just need to understand and familiarize yourself within the information that is given in the pre-scene, and then move on to prepare in the normal way for your exam by doing questions across all the syllabus areas. I think that's what I would just wanted to add. Thank you.
Michelle, have we lost you?
No, you haven't. I'm still here, I promise.
Right.
I pressed my mute button to answer some questions. Sorry, I was answering questions in text. Oh, okay. So, anyway, I'll repeat. Given that the time given in the exam is now less, are students expected to write less? And linked to that, can you confirm that the intellectual level of the exam is exactly the same as it has been so far?
We do not. Okay,
Jessie, you start. You start. There we go, and I'll come in. Yes. We are reducing the time, and the reduction in time is due to the fact that there will be less new information for you to work through. There will be new information, there will be exhibits, but you'll already be familiar with that industry and the organization. You'll have the contextual background before you start that exam session. So a lot of the synthesis and the reflection time that you had in the 4 hours that we needed you to do, that is now being taken out of the actual timed exam. You'll do that beforehand. There is still new information. There will still be exhibits, but there will be fewer exhibits than you've had in the old format. And that's because of the fact that in the old format, some of the background and context was included in exhibits, and now it's in the pre-scene. So there's less new information, fewer exhibits, and you've now got fewer tasks because you've only got 3 tasks. So there's less information, new information to read through, and you've got fewer tasks. But the mark allocations aren't decreasing, so we're still at 80 marks and 20 marks. And we'd still be expecting students to write the same level of depth and detail in their answers as we do at the moment. So we're not expecting you to write less at all. We're actually expecting you to, because there's less new information for you to work through, and you've already got that familiarity, you'll be able to get onto writing sort of a lot quicker. And so those answers should still be the same level of detail as they are at the moment. It does mean, though, that you're going to have to manage your time carefully in the 3 hours and 15 minutes, and then so we do strongly recommend that you have a practice with those specimens and the practice platform and the mock when it becomes available, so that you're used to working with a pre-scene and then a reduced SBL exam. Jessie, anything to add to that?
I think you have covered everything, Jo. Thank you, and it's clear. Thank you.
Fantastic. And with regard to the pre-scene, why isn't it being made available to learning providers early so that they can write mocks? Why are the learning providers getting it at the same time as students?
Well, the learning providers are getting the same time as students, and this will be the case because ACCA believes in inclusivity. We do have, students who are with learning providers and students who are studying on their own, but we want to have a fair, playground here so that everybody, whether you are with a learning provider or you are studying on your own, you get these materials at the same time, and then, have the same period to digest the information before the exam. So it's important that everybody gets the pre-scene at the same time. And as we said, for September exam, it will be on 22nd of August, and therefore everybody will get it on 22nd of August, and then you can start discussing it with the tutors if you are studying with learning providers or with your colleagues. But it's all to be on the same ground, really. Jo, please add.
Yeah, absolutely. It's inclusivity, and it was important to us when we made this change that everybody was treated fairly and that all students have got an equal opportunity, in terms of access to the pre-scene. Thank you.
I'll make sure I turn my mic back on this time. Right, what have we got? With regard to the 3 tasks, students are asking, are they able to go backwards and forwards between them once they're in the exam session?
Yes, you can. So absolutely, if you start task 1, you move on to task 2, you want to go back and put something else into task 1, go back and put it into task 1. So you will be able to go backwards and forwards. What we don't want you to do is do task 1, start task 2, remember you had something to add into task 1 and put it into your task 2 answer. You need to go back and put it into task 1. So backwards and forwards is absolutely allowed. Everything is only finalized in the final submission, so you can absolutely go backwards and forwards. And the only thing that you're not seeing all at the same time is your tasks. So you'll see all the exhibits, you're able to access those all the time, and the pre-seen all the time. It's just the tasks that only show one at a time, but you can move backwards and forwards and view them in any order and answer them in any order. Just make sure you answer them in the correct response area.
And just to add to that, the fact that each task is answered separately in a separate response area does not make this not integrated. The exam continues to be unintegrated, and therefore all the tasks share the same information from the exhibits. So there's no each task is not linked to one exhibit. No, you can take information from exhibit 1, 2, 3 to use for task 1, and the same to use for task 2, just as it is we are currently doing. Thank you.
Okay. What else have we got? So our slightly complex question, this one, I'm just trying to parse it as I read it. Are there going to be less requirements to present an analysis of company context, seen as most of the context should be given in the pre-seen with these changes?
So I think that's asking if we wouldn't be able to ask sort of students to do kind of a SWOT or a PESTLE. I mean, we don't ask students to do those specifically, but sometimes in the tasks, that's sort of the requirement to answer the task. And no, that we can still examine anything at all in the syllabus. It's just that when we do ask it, so if we were requiring students to do some kind of a SWOT analysis or a Porter's 5 forces or any of the models, then that answer, that model, would be based more on the exam exhibit information rather than pre-seen. So what you won't find is that there'll be a task that the answer to which is mostly based on the pre-seen and that you could have prepared in advance. So that you won't find, because the exam tasks are based on the exhibits, which is new information that you don't have. So anything in the syllabus is still examinable. The focus, though, is on the new information. Remember, the pre-seen is just background and context. Jessie, anything to add to that?
No, that's clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. There's an awful lot of questions coming in. I'm just going to have to scroll through and have a look if I can find any others that I can understand quickly. Students are asking for samples of the new format, and I know we've said that the new format, the new style, the idea of the pre-seen is now all available on the practice platform, and there will be, or there are already, specimen exams, and there will be a mock soon. The mock, of course, can't be based on the pre-seen we're going to use for the exam, because that isn't being released till afterwards. So there's lots of information there, folks. If we were to go through a pre-seen in this session, it would be a little bit longer, but feel free to go onto the practice platform. And the key word there, I think, is free, as some people are asking if there's a charge for these materials, and no, there isn't. One for Joe and Jessie here, I think. People who have materials that relate to the June exam or exams in the prior year, will their materials that they have available still be helpful to help them study and revise towards the new format?
Yes, because the syllabus isn't really changing at all. So yes, that's still relevant in terms of the technical coverage. Even the past, it'll all be old style, but even those sort of past exam style questions are all relevant, because we're going to be continuing to ask in the same style. The only thing that we would say, if you are working from materials that are based on the old format, make sure you set yourself time to work through the specimens on the practice platform and do the mock, so that you're used to the new format and you're used to the working with a pre-scene. Jessie, I think that's the best advice, but it's still relevant, isn't it? There's no syllabus change. Yeah.
No, there's no syllabus changes, so that's still relevant. All the past exam questions, all the technical articles, the examiner reports, they're all relevant. As Joe said, it's only the format in the new format that you need to check with, or you need to practice with, in the practice platform. But otherwise, you can use those materials to learn, to gain the knowledge, the skills that are necessary to pass the exam.
Okay. One about general question answering here. Should students always explain both sides of an issue when they're asked to evaluate a situation? So when the verb evaluate is used, should they be covering pros and cons?
Usually, but we would not normally rely on just one word. So our tasks are normally a few lines long, and there's the stem above the task, which would give more information about what students should be doing. So normally, if you look at past exams, we talk about benefits and drawbacks and pros and cons. So evaluate would be in there, but there's normally other clues as to how you should do the evaluation as well. Jessie, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It has to be in a context, because you are given an assignment, and you have to look at what you are specifically being asked, and then do the evaluation. Yes, on the face of it, evaluation will look at the both sides, the pros and the cons. But you have to consider the situation, especially the instruction, which is the opening stem in each task. What really is the issue before you look at whether you have to before you consider what exactly you have to do. But also there are articles where you can see different ways of asking exams in ACCA on our website. That can help to learn what evaluation means in a question, what analysis means, etc. Yeah, thank you.
Let me run through some more questions. A simple one that keeps popping up that I think may have been answered in the background before, but just because it's come up again a couple of times. If a student makes what the marker would consider a valid point, how many marks are there usually available for that valid point?
We usually say, a point qualifies for a mark. Now, just, you may explain and further develop that if the development point is adding value to the explanation you have given, that it may score a further mark. For example, you explain a point and it's valid, you gain a mark, and you give a relevant example to that to back up that point, then it will qualify for a second mark. Is that so, Joe?
Yes, so that's usually, well, that's often how it works, is that, what, as they just says, 1 mark for the initial point. If it's developed and that development is applied and it's relevant and it's adding something, second point. And most of, if you go back and look at past papers and things, you'll see that in the marking guides, a lot of the marking guides indicate that it's 2 marks for a developed point. That doesn't mean that it's 2 marks a point. It's 1 mark a point, and then if it's developed, it's the second mark.
Yeah, indeed.
Just to add there, especially when it comes to numbers or figures, just putting a figure on its own, it doesn't qualify a mark. So you explain the figure and then provide further, development point, further backing point to that, then it qualifies for 2 marks. So make sure, if you are doing, like you have a spreadsheet and you have calculated things, those don't qualify for any marks. What qualifies marks is what do those figures mean in the context of the question you are responding to. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's the case with all of the SP exams, all of the exams at this level, that you have to justify, you have to explain, you have to put it in context. It's the same for, say, APM and AFM and the like. So yeah, it's normally 1 point a mark, but if you expand further and add some more value, there may be a second mark. But yeah, not to think of that as 2 marks for every point, because that's not the case. An interesting question here. How are we applying professional skills and ethics in the exam? How are the professional skills and the ethics applied to the SBL exam?
Well, we've got 5 professional skills, and they are clearly explained in the SBL exam as to what we're looking for. So they're linked to a task, and there's an explanation within the SBL exam as to what we're looking for as we're examining that professional skill. So often, or sometimes we might ask you in an exam to do slides, and that's normally the communication professional skill. So you'll do your slides, and then there'll be a professional skills for communication, for clarifying something to the board. And so in the exam, it is quite clear which professional skill we're looking for and what we're looking for to get you the marks in that professional skill. So read it carefully. Ethics sort of underpins a lot of the SBL sort of syllabus. We don't have ethics as a separate professional skill. It's not one of the 5, but certainly students should be thinking ethics all the way through. It's really sort of fundamental to the qualification. It underpins everything. So anybody who's sort of giving sort of unethical advice or not picking up on unethical issues and raising them as part of their answer is going to lose marks. But ethics, and sometimes in the tasks, we could ask about identifying ethical issues, couldn't we? There isn't a separate part of our syllabus that's purely ethics. It's sort of interwoven across everything, but it is really quite fundamental. Jessie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think ethics is fundamental, as you say, to all of SCA exams, and that's why probably it's best to do EPSM, before even you do these exams, because it helps to actually have that a solid understanding of these. But ethics is there. You just have to be ethical. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. We have to be ethical to be good accountants. Yes. What else have I got? Oops. It's difficult to keep track of the questions sometimes. Yeah, an interesting one that I think maybe to dispel a myth here. What is the tie-in between the ethical and professional marks. For an example, if somebody had 40 technical, would they automatically see 10 professional?
No, there's no automatic really. Sometimes there is a link. So in some cases, if you're doing sort of an analysis or evaluation, if you think of those professional skills marks, if you've done a good evaluation, a good analysis, you'll generally have scored higher technical marks anyway. And because you've done a good evaluation, a good analysis, that'll get you the higher professional skills marks. So in some of the professional skills, there's a closer relationship. If your slide notes are really, really quite good and clear, and you've done a good convincing job, you'll get your professional skills marks for communication. Skepticism is harder because you could give a fairly decent technical answer without being skeptical. So you could cover the various aspects that we'd expect you to, but you haven't actually been very skeptical. So you could be all right on technical marks, but be lower in skepticism marks. So there isn't really a direct, rule for this many marks for technical will get you this many marks for professional skills. They are assessed at the same time, but with a different hat on. So as they're marked, technical marks, and then there's the grid for the professional skills, and it's re-looked at, Jessie, isn't it, in a professional skills?
Yeah.
So that it's not, well, we've given this for technical, so you'd automatically get this. I hope that helps and it's quite clear. In some cases, it will be a closer link, but it's not. There's certainly not a standard rule.
Certainly not. I agree. It's not that closely linked. We've seen students getting very high technical marks, but very low professional skills marks, and that's why you have to consider everything else to ensure you gain as much as professional skills marks as possible, because 20% is really quite a lot to lose. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, ladies. I've had the odd question about ethics and the EPSM module, and we know it has been down for a little while. Keep your eyes peeled for the website updates, as we are expecting to have an update pretty soon. So EPSM will be, or the ethics and professional skills module should be available soon, but look for the updates, as we don't know when yet. I don't have any questions at the moment left here that we can answer easily in this session. So if I can hand back to Martin, and we can hopefully wrap this up and say good night.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. Before we wrap up, I think we have a minute or so. I don't know if Joanne and Jessie would have any final thoughts or final comments.
No, just a thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for all the questions that have come through. Hopefully this has answered a lot of those questions and given you a lot of comfort in terms of understanding what's changing for September and onwards. But there are resources that are available to you now, and there will be other further resources that we're making available as we move closer to the September exam. So just watch out for those.
Yeah, I echo that, and to say, thank you very much for all the questions, and good luck with your preparation for your exams. I hope these will help you to pass your exams. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Joanne, Jessie, and Michelle, for that fantastic session. We have tried to respond to as many questions as possible, so we do hope that has been useful. Please remember that you can access the recording of this session later. You'll receive an email tomorrow, or you can use the link that you have joined on today to listen in to this session again. As well, as Joe has said, we continue to update the resources on the student section of our website. So do keep checking in on that section, and do follow the guidance as you prepare for your SBL exam from September onwards. From the rest of us here at ACCA, just to wish you all the best as you prepare and continue with the journey in your qualification. Thank you very much, and see you some other day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.